My name is Beatrice Dixon. I am the co-founder and CEO of the Honey Pot Company. I'm here with these really beautiful humans, and we're here to have a really beautiful conversation. You know, we're all here in celebration of Black History Month, but with an experience that we call reclaiming wellness, which is really all about loving yourself, reclaiming your self-love, reclaiming the ability for you to be able to not have to be strong all the time. And, you know, and these humans up here are here we're here to talk about ways to do that, right? And so just to give you guys a little bit of background on what we're going to do today, we're going to have our panel discussion, and then we actually have a really cool, what would we call it? Yeah, a really cool activity that you'll have to keep your mind open to, but it'll be good. It won't be anything too crazy. And then the last thing that I wanted to say was really grateful for Target, because Target actually sponsored this Reclaiming Wellness event for us, which I think is really beautiful. They've been really great partners to us. And so thank you, Target. I love you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to go through and allow you guys to introduce yourselves and tell everyone what you do. And you can just go one by one. You want to start, Synmia?
Oh, yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Synmia Rosine. I'm a Cali native. I'm from LA. But my family and my ancestry is here in Texas, which is so nice to be home. I'm an herbalist. I'm a mother of 3. I'm a land steward. I am a birth worker. I'm a doula. I have devoted my life to nourishing myself and hopefully teaching others how to nourish themselves so that that way they can find their own journey in this healing. I mean, I don't want to go crazy, but I feel like a part of reclaiming your wellness is learning how to nourish yourselves. It's not like a rule book. It's not one size fits all. So that's kind of what I special in, learning how to cuddle with yourself and know who you are. Yeah. I love it. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley McGirt. I'm a Seattle native, living in San Diego, but I still go back and forth. I am a mental health clinician. I specialize in racial trauma, and the premise of my work really is around helping individuals address the systemic oppression and how that impacts our mental health. I also created a foundation that provides free therapy and mental health resources to the Black community. I'm a speaker, an author, and I am all about all things wellness. So I'm super excited and honored to be here among you all, people who look like me. I don't see this a lot, especially in San Diego or Seattle. So I'm happy to be among community and having this conversation about how we can reclaim our wellness.
Hi, everyone. My name's Arielle Estoria. I'm a poet, an author, and an actor, also from LA, but my number is 510, and I will keep it till I die. I am based mostly in Pasadena area, and my goal is words not for the ears, but for the soul. I believe that if I'm only up here and you're just seeing what I do or what I say or my story, then I don't feel like I'm doing my job as an artist. So if usually when I do poetry, I say, if you cry, then I'm sorry, but I'm also really excited that you're letting me be part of your healing. So if we tap into something that you feel and you feel deeply, I hope that you give yourself permission to let that be.
So I really love this, one of your quotes in your book, Unfolding, that's actually going to be coming out soon, right? So she wrote a book and it's going to be coming out soon. So everybody can support her. But in your book, you say, Arielle, in order to heal, you must hurt, which is funny because it makes sense. Even when you take it down to the elementary level, if you cut yourself, in order for that to heal, it had to hurt first. Can you give us some more color on what that means to you and how you arrived at that and what that means for all of us?
I think we're in such a society, especially now we're talking about like wellness and healing, but like we don't talk about like how painful it is actually to get to that point. We don't talk about how we have to be hurt or wounded in order to heal from something. So I think for me that in order to heal, you have to hurt. And I think that's the same as living and breathing. Like it's a part of life. And it's like the part that we wish we could run from. It's the part that we wish we can hide from, but it's not. Just like how we exist, how we breathe, healing is a part of that. And that means grieving is a part of that. And for me personally, my book, The Unfolding, I experienced just this season of just not being heard, of not understanding who I was or what I stood for. And every part of it hurt. And I think for me specifically, talking about change, like we're so quick to be like, change is beautiful. You be you, sis, like you pop off. But like, we're like, that's actually really painful to actually do that and to actually change into who we feel like we are into our fruition. And so I think for me, it's like, I'm a feeler, I'm an empath. And so I don't shy away from feeling deeply. And sometimes that means the sad part. It doesn't just mean that everything is rainbows and happiness. Sometimes we got to like feel and hurt really deeply in order for us to heal really deeply.
Mm-hmm. So two-part question. What were some of the hindrances that you experienced? Like, I don't know if you can give us like a real live example.
Sure. Yeah.
And then what is real live example for what you did to get through your hurt, right? Because, it's easy for us to say the things like you just said, but sometimes people just need like, something practical that they can take on.
Sure. So for my specific unfolding and what I had to experience it was just a season of being told you're different. You're acting new. I don't recognize you. You're not familiar to me. And it was coming from people who I love and who I adore. So I was like, oh, I got to snap back. Like, I got to be who they're familiar with. Like, I got to be who they're comfortable with versus being actually who I felt I was becoming in my fullness. And that didn't look like what it needed to look like forever. Hello? Is this still on? Okay. Yeah. I was like, I know if it's not connected, then people online can't hear us. I know that it's not going to look like how other people want it to look like, but it was so uncomfortable to be who I needed to be, even though I knew it wasn't going to be an applause by other people. And I feel like I don't know why it's making me think of this. I'm not comparing myself to Riri. I'm just using Riri. I'm just using her as an example. But I know a lot of people last night were like, her performance was this, her performance was that. And I thought it was amazing. Also, she was pregnant. Let her be. But it was mostly people were like, it wasn't enough. Like, she didn't do enough. She wasn't performative enough. And I just think like, if we're in this era where we're like soft girl era, healer area, but we don't allow other women to actually do the same, then why are we like saying that? And so for me, it's giving people, I want the permission to be who I needed to be in my fullness. And I want that extended to other people. So for me, when I was hearing you're changing, you're different, you're not who we want you to be or thought you were going to be, I had to trust myself and believe that I'm walking into my fullness and who I'm meant to be, and it may not receive an applause from other people. And that's painful, especially as women who like to be people pleasers, especially as women who just want to be seen as okay in everybody's eyes. It's hard, very, very hard.
Yeah, but you get what you give. Yeah. So Ashley, this is a question for you. So clearly not only has Arielle used literature as a form of art to share her wellness and healing journey, but Ashley, you've done the same to inspire others. So I'd love to hear about your book and moreover the inspiration behind the book. And then I'd also love to hear how you got into how you started and created your own practice.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, the inspiration behind my book was my love for travel. So before people knew me as a therapist, they knew me as this globe-trotting travel blogger. I honestly didn't even tell people that I was a clinician because every time I said I was a therapist, they're like, well, are you psychoanalyzing me? And I don't want to get into all that. It's like, that's a whole nother conversation. So I kind of kept that in, and it took a long time for me to really go out into social media and have this platform and showcase myself as Therapy with Ash, because before that I was Travels with Ash. And as I was doing the work with my clients and my own work and traveling around the world, I often heard my clients say, I need a vacation. I also was saying, I need a vacation. And so my book is called I Tried to Travel It Away, Mental Health Tips for Travelers. And it teaches you how to be comfortable with where you are and not have to run away. And I feel like with our generation, we're always looking to catch the next flight because we're running away from something. And as someone who's been to over 50 countries, I think it's amazing that we should travel, but we shouldn't want to travel away from our life. And also a little bit of backstory. I grew up in a predominantly white environment, extremely wealthy community, and I was not as wealthy as the people in the community in which I was living in. And I would always hear stories when we came back from our summer breaks about where these folks were going. And they would tell these stories of gallivanting around Paris and London and Africa. And I had 5 other siblings. My mom could not afford us to take us anywhere. So we spent our summers at the park. And I love my mother for that. And I love those memories. But a part of me also was always wanting to go to those places where I heard those students, my fellow classmates sharing. And I made a vow to myself that when I got older, I was going to go to all those places. And I've been to over 50 countries. So I've been every place that those individuals have talked about. But when I was looking at why I was going to those places, it was from a place of sadness, a place of grieving, a place of not wanting to be home. And my older sister, I was always trying to get her to come with me. And I didn't understand why she didn't want to go. And she's like, I don't understand why you keep running around. Like, I'm happy being here. My family's here. I don't want to leave. And I looked at her in a negative light, like, you don't want to travel. You don't want to explore the world. How is that? And she's like, I really enjoy being here. So that's when I started looking introspectively at myself and at my clients who were saying the same things, because I always try to model those behaviors. And then going back to my whole grief story and why I was traveling and running and how I started my private practice was when I was younger, my grandmother passed away. My grandmother raised me, and I ended up experiencing grief that turned into major depression. And I always like to differentiate that, because grief is a normal response to loss, but it can turn into major depressive disorder, anxiety, and a whole host of other things. And I ended up seeing a counselor. As I mentioned, I grew up in a white neighborhood, so there were no counselors who looked like me. I ended up seeing a white woman who did not understand the role of grandmother in Black families. So I had to educate this woman about what it was like being Black in America at 9 years old, a grown white woman. And I never got a chance to really process through my grief and do my own healing, because I was educating a woman during my sessions. She didn't understand the role of grandmother in Black families, the intricacies, things that I was experiencing in my household that were the norm for many people who look like you and I. And I was just like, are other Black kids experiencing this? There has to be another way. I really wanted to be a lawyer, but I pivoted really to help myself in my own wellness, to understand what was happening, because it got to a point to where I was really suffering from like suicidal ideation. I didn't want to be in a world where my grandmother wasn't in this world. And I couldn't have those conversations with my community when I was talking to them, be like, well, just pray about it. You know, she's in a better place. And I had issues with God for taking my grandmother away, and all of these different things that in turn allowed me to circle and pivot into the field of psychology and social work so that I could be the person that I needed when I was 9 years old. And that is why I get on stages like this and advocate. And I'm really about disrupting the system and changing the face of therapy so that we know it's not old white men, it's not Sigmund Freud, so that I'm making sure we're bringing back African-centered healing practices, and that we know that there's multiple ways of healing. I do a lot of work to teach other clinicians, because I went to some of the best universities in the world. I went to another HBCU, Clark Atlanta University. I went to Harvard. I went to University of Washington. And within these institutions, they weren't teaching you how to work with people who looked like me. At Clark, they did. Clark was all about Black folks. But University of Washington, Harvard, they weren't doing that. They were teaching us evidence-based practices that were created on and for white folks. Sigmund Freud worked with white Jewish women, you know, Piaget, Watson, all of these psychodynamic leaders, the forefathers of psychology in quotations, who are really racist. And so I'm like, I'm supposed to take these processes, these models, and work in my community with people like me. That's not okay. So that's kind of a short story of how my book came to be and how I started my private practice.
That's dope. So so now, how long did it take you to get to a place where you weren't traveling to run away? Like, how long was that journey?
It took,
Not that there's a destination.
yeah,
Because that
yeah.
shit can still happen. But
I would say probably within a year of having that conversation with my sister and looking at the life she had created for herself and my life of wanting to go. And then also hearing what my clients were saying. And at the time I called myself your favorite millennial therapist. So I had other millennial clients and it was all like, we're catching flights, not feelings. And I'm like, no, that's critical to how we were created. We were created to be in community with other beings. So it was really probably like a year or so doing some deep work, doing my own therapy, and asking myself, why do you want to go? Why is it that as soon as you get home, you're already on Kayak, you're already on these websites trying to figure out the next place to go? And the reality was I was stressed out. I was being all things to all people. I was still processing my own grief, some of my own depression that had came back up. And then it's like, no, let's do that work. And now we can travel and stay home. And also I wasn't giving myself the space to take a day before going back to work. So it's like, I would go to these places and immediately go back to work. And it's like, bruh, I'm ready to go. I'm not trying to be in this space. So that was also part of my journey, making sure I incorporated an extra day to rest and give myself reprieve so I wasn't exhausted from my workplace. But, you know, it's an ongoing process. Some days I say that, yo, I need a vacation and I need to check myself. Why do I need a vacation? Am I trying to vacation from my life? Because when I get back from that trip, all that stuff's still gonna be there.
That's so real. Yeah, you can't run away.
Right. At all.
Leaving the kitchen dirty.
Yeah.
The kitchen is still going to be
It's
dirty.
gonna be dirty. It is. So I actually want all of you to answer this, but Synmia, I'm gonna have you answer it first. How do we as a community rebuild and maintain spaces for wellness? Like real spaces for wellness, like in your room or in your house or in your car or wherever.
I love that question. So a little bit about myself. I'm super nomadic. My father passed away when I was 16. I'm estranged from my mom. And then when my dad died, you know, the whole family kind of just broke apart. And so that was a question that I didn't know that I was asking myself at such a young age, but it was an ongoing question, even up until now, you know. I mean, I have 3 kids and I don't have that family support. So I'm constantly making space for wellness for myself wherever I am. And recently I have been, you know, I live in a mountain town. I'm the only Black person there. And that's hard, you know, because I need peace and quiet in order to hear my spiritual self. But I also want to see my people, you know, when I go to the market. So I would have to say, like, the past 2 years, I've really been asking myself that question, like, what do I need? What are the tools what tools do I need in my bag to really kind of not need to outsource, right, my wellness or my healing? And it's really come down to my ancestry. Knowing where you came from will help you in the journey on where you need to be, right? I don't know if it's the same for a lot of people, but, you know, when we look back at our ancestry, there's so much pain and there's so much trauma. And a lot of us, especially for myself, I've had to kind of abandon my ancestry in a way in order to survive, like kind of really take on that lone wolf mentality and that lone wolf like cloak, right? But these past couple of years, especially having kids, like ancestry and my ancestors and where I come from is super important because it's something that I want my children to grow up with. And every time I go back, I've I find like a new door opens and I find myself not being so alone, right? And cultivating your wellness space, whether that be buying flowers for yourself. You know, today I'm going to spend $20 on myself because these are flowers that are going to last in my house for a week or something. And every time I look at these flowers, I feel grounded, or I feel centered, or I feel loved. Cleaning your space, right? Whether that be in your car, you know, I slept in my car for a year. I've slept in some crazy places, you know, because I didn't really have a home or like a cushion to fall back on, right? So just knowing that home and wellness begins here. It's nothing materialistic. It's nothing that you can buy. It's not a podcast. It's not a book. Once you tap into self, then I feel, you know, your spirit guides, your ancestors, the plants, they start talking to you and they're saying, okay, go and buy this, go over here, change your room around. You should pick up this book. They start speaking to you, and you're in active conversation with your ancestors and your healers that are here to protect you in this lifetime. Because outside of that, where's the protection really? You have to buy it. You know, it's something that costs money. And for those of us who don't come from money and it's really hard to come by, then, you know, you kind of feel like you're out of that healing space, or like, I can't afford this. I can't go and get some Palo Santo, or I can't go get some white sage. So I got all these demons in my room. And it's not really like that. It's so easy to create a spiritual bath for yourself, going outside and picking some flowers, or going outside and sitting with those plants and seeing what comes to you. And then you taking that, steeping that in water and making a bath with it and blessing your home with it. That way you're really in commune with the spirits around you. I was talking to my Uber driver today, and we were just talking about land, and my family and we have some acreage in Burleson, and it's been in our family for over 100 years. Burleson, Texas, yeah.
Okay, got it.
And it's been in our family for over 100 years. And obviously everybody knows we got some white folks knocking on the door, trying to like encroach on that. And it dawned on me, like, you know, we are the color of the soil for a reason. You know, we have an innate, very close relationship to this planet and to the earth. And they know that, which is why they stick us in brick cities. They stick us in the concrete jungle to keep us off that frequency. And so for me, and a lot of my healing came from tapping into that frequency. Like I was raised in LA, like South LA. So we just had a backyard. There wasn't like, my grandma loved roses. That was the extent of it, you know? So there wasn't any like herbal medicine or like old voodoo, like traditional things that I did, all those things that I had to find for myself. And it started with the plants, really. And that's once I tapped into that world, it's like everything kind of like came to a head. Yeah.
I love what you said, because we're conditioned that when you want to do something that you have to go and get something, right? Like literally these flowers right here.
Yeah, I've been staring at
If
them.
somebody wanted to take those home, right, and take some of those off, like you said, put that in some bath water, take some salt from your kitchen, put it in the tub. Like it doesn't, just because, I love that you said that, right? Like if you wanted to burn this and walk through your house, it's the same. Really, all that it is the intention. It's not necessarily always the thing that you have to buy from the spiritual store or the crystal or the whatever. Like we're taught that, but that's not actually true. And I'm not saying that the crystals don't work and that the sage doesn't work and that the Palo Santo doesn't work, because it works. But what works is the person that's behind it, setting the intention and putting out the right. So like, even if you're walking through your house, open up a window and tell anything in even if you don't have no damn flowers, and telling whatever that energy is in your house to leave. It can be as simple as that.
The power of the voice, you know,
Yeah.
like when you think about it, Black folks are resourceful, you know, and back in the day, you know, we didn't have all the things. You would take whatever you had around, and you would say a prayer over it, and instantly that's protection, right? Making mojo bags, they took whatever was around and said, you know what, I'm going to put this in the bag. I'm going to say a prayer over it. And this is what's going to protect you when you go off here, go work over there. It's like tapping into our ancestral self and realizing how resourceful and how magical innately we are. We were born with the magic. These systems were built to dim that magic down, right? And so us subscribing to that idea that we need these external things when all we need is to open up ourselves is, back to what you were asking me, like that's a lot of where my healing came from, because I didn't, it's hard when you're like, oh, I don't have this, that, and a third, so I can't heal right now. I can't heal properly. And you get kind of stuck in that loop. And then the depression, I struggle. It's in my ancestral lineage, like bipolar depression and suicide is pretty thick in my family. So those are two things that I'm constantly trying to unwrite within my own DNA. So my kids can also,
Which is why it's important to understand where you come from.
1,000%.
And to go to the doctor too.
1,000%. Yes. Yeah. But, even for myself, like, go to the doctor. But if you are a person like me, I don't really, because they don't look like me. And if I tell them an experience or I'm my transparent self, they're instantly like 5150. We got to get you locked up 5 days in here and here, take this
For
medication,
sure. No, for sure.
and all I needed was someone to listen. All I needed is an ear. So it's so beautiful that you're creating that space, for those of us who don't, because, therapy doesn't work if you can't be your whole ass self. If you are holding back certain aspects of yourself because you feel like somebody's about to tell on you,
right?
How can you really facilitate this healing? So it's so beautiful that you're like opening up space for people that look like us with experiences, that we can all share and all attest to one or two things, so we can actually get on top of this healing.
Absolutely. I get it. So I'd like to actually ask you guys the same question too. As a community, how do you like to create wellness and like kind of really rebuild your space and make sure that you're keeping your energy together? Like, how do you build a wellness space for yourself?
For me, my wellness space is looking at the things that really nourish my mind, my body, and my spirit. It's being intentional with my alone time. Being unapologetic about the ways in which I rest. Like, I love naps. I don't apologize for it. I'll take multiple naps throughout the day.
I love it.
My husband knows, my team knows, like, listen, I'm like, I need to go take a nap right now. And that is right. And that's how I rejuvenate, and I allow my team the space to do that as well. We don't operate within the traditional work environment. They're allowed to show up at a time that is most productive to them, at their optimum work hours. If that's 1 a.m., that's 1 a.m. for them. And we all know each other's, and then we communicate, not on our cell phones, but on an app, Slack, so that we're not, if your optimum work time is 1 a.m., you're not texting me at 1 a.m. because I'm asleep. So, we're all coordinated within that. And I think that's something that is super important for me. I really love the NAP ministry based out of Atlanta because they really stress how resting is a revolutionary act. And I'm also a researcher. And through part of my research, it's been looking at American chattel slavery. And I came across the bodies of those who had been enslaved. And I was looking at some images.
Can you tell them what that is?
American chattel slavery.
Yeah.
Explain what American chattel slavery is. Yeah, so
I've heard that term before.
American chattel slavery differentiates between the normal everyday slavery. It's one of the worst forms of slavery that's ever occurred around the world. And it occurred here in America when they brought enslaved individuals from Africa and the way in which they were separated from their family members, the lynchings, all of those different things, and the impact that has on the body, on a community, and through us, because through epigenetics, we know that we are carrying all of the things that our grandparents went through within our own bodies, and we carry that trauma and a legacy of that. So I really love the work of Dr. Joy DeGruy, who wrote Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. She talks a lot about that legacy of American chattel slavery. But
the only reason why I asked you, like, we know what slavery is, but not everybody maybe had heard that particular terminology.
yeah, and that's why I always separate and I differentiate American chattel slavery, because like I said, it's one of the worst inhumane forms of slavery that's ever occurred, ever. And so when I was looking at the research behind that and I came across those images, I had noticed that the muscle had literally detached itself from the bone from these folks' bodies. And I wonder if that's where the saying, work yourself to the bone, came from. And here we are, free under another different type of slavery, but not American chattel slavery. And we don't take our breaks. We don't take our mandatory federal 15-minute breaks, our lunch breaks. We are not resting. And I also I've done a lot of things, but I was also a hospice therapist for 6 years. And the majority of
That's beautiful work.
yes, I loved it. I miss it. But the majority of my Black and Brown patients who were coming to me would be anywhere from 20 to 60. And my own grandmother passed away at 62 years old. I have a TED Talk on this called Dying While Black. But essentially what I was seeing was that we were dying younger and at disproportionate rates than our white counterparts. My white patients would be well into their hundreds. I'll never forget, I had a 104-year-old white woman who I actually had to discharge because she was not showing signs and symptoms of dying. And in order to be on hospice, you have to be actively dying. We have to be able to bill insurance and all of those things and say, hey, this person is actually dying. So we discharged her. And all my white folks who were coming to me, not all of them, but the majority of them would be well into their hundreds, and our community is not. And I attribute that to the lack of rest, systemic racism, poor healthcare, education, all of these things, the whole medical apartheid within this system. So for me, my wellness begins with resting. It begins with taking care of myself.
I love that.
Showing up in spaces like this honestly rejuvenates me, being in community, being around others who understand my struggle, my pain points, what it's like to be a Black person in America, where I don't have to explain that like I did at 9 years old to the white counselor I was seeing. Baths, the beaches. I'm a water sign, Cancer. So that's why I love that I'm now in San Diego. I actually have the ocean that's right next to me that I can see and sun. And so that writing, journaling, that's part of my wellness journey. And going to a therapist as well, because I believe that all therapists should have a therapist as well. If you're doing this work, you're sitting with others' pain and trauma, and part of that stays with you and in the body. And movement, I do progressive muscle relaxation before and after I see a client, because trauma stays in the body. And the only way to release that is through movement. And when I look at the life of my grandmother and other Black and Brown folks who have came to me throughout life or on my hospice caseload, they weren't moving. They didn't take that time for themselves, and they were passing from preventable illnesses, chronic stress-related illnesses, strokes. That's what my grandmother passed away from. All of these things that can be treated through certain practices, through our healing journey, through being unapologetic about taking that time for self and knowing, hey, it's not selfish. I could take care of me, because if I'm not here, if I'm not well, I can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah, you gotta follow all of that.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing okay?
Yeah, I'm like, is that we all good? Can we just breathe for a second?
Right.
And just exhale it out. Like, we don't remember that when like talking about wellness, we got to talk about that stuff that hurts, and sometimes that can get really heavy. I think for me, when it comes to figuring out what to do for my wellness, I'm a words person. So I got to dissect what I'm even saying when I say that. and I love, Ashley, what you said about the mind, body, and spirit, because oftentimes, I mean, I grew up a Baptist pastor's kid. So oftentimes for me, being well only meant spiritually, but that was it. And my body was being a certain type of way. My mind was a certain type of way. But like, as I get older, I'm 31 now, and I realize it has to be all three. Like, if my body is a temple, that means my heart is in there too. That means my mind is in there too, right? And so for me, it's realizing that it has to be a mind, body, and spirit connection. My spirit has to be in wellness, which means, I'm pretty sure wellness means being able to be its fruitful self, being to its fullest potential. And when you think about that, that means all three aspects of who we are, from mind, body to soul, has to be living and flourishing, has to be in fullness. And you were mentioning epigenetics. Okay, my friend was just telling me this week about epigenetics. Why am I struggling? Epigenetics. It's a word. I just learned it. It's about to ingrain. Epigenetics, but specifically the epigenetics of fruit flies. And there's like this study that if these fruit flies are in a jar, and if you put the jar, a cap on the jar, then that first generation of fruit flies will learn, okay, I can only go this high, because the first generation just hitting the top. The second generation learns, okay, I can only go this far, right? They take the cap off. Again, the second generation, I can only go this far. There's no cap there anymore. The third generation doesn't even try to go anywhere. The cap has been off, but the third generation has learned, what's the point? I'm only going to keep hitting the top. And I really feel like this millennial into Gen Z generation is like learning, like, and trying to get our mom and our grandma and our aunts and our uncles, like, there's no cap. Like, there's no cap anymore. And it's gonna get tense, because grandma said, well, there was a cap when I was there, so I'm not going, right? But we're like, I don't trust it. And so we're gonna butt heads. It's gonna be tense, but like, I really feel like the discomfort of our generation right now is supposed to be like, there's no cap, which means we can rest. We don't have to bend and break. And I come from, a family of women who are chronically burnt out, diagnosed chronically burnt out. Their bodies are depleted. They've used up all their adrenaline. They are chronically burnt out. And I'm a lot of those women. I'm every bit of those women. And so my goal and my heart and my intention is like, I got to treat this a little bit better. I got to get a little bit further, realize that there's no cap there actually than my mom was able to, than my grandma was able to, so that my niece can, so that my baby eventually can. And so I think when we think about wellness, we have to define what it is. And also we have to believe that we're deserving of it. We're so quick to be like, you can be well, be healthy, self-care, love on yourself. But you got to believe that you're worth loving on yourself to begin with. Like, we have to believe that we're worthy of it in order to pursue it. And so I think those are the two. And then for me, I like reading. I like being with my husband. I like being at the water. I'm a yoga teacher for bigger bodied women. So I like decolonizing white yoga in LA and being about in our bodies. And
Decolonizing white yoga. Go girl.
It's white. It's so white.
I feel like that's like a documentary or something.
I'm not the one, but I'll be in it. Somebody else started, but I'll be in it.
Hilarious. So, Synmia, motherhood can be a very scary place for Black humans, right? Especially, yeah. So I'd love to know how you as a doula guide those, whether they're TTC, and I'm sure you know what TTC journey means. I don't know what it means, so I'm excited to hear about it. But whether they're TTC journey or expecting to prioritize their wellness and not shift into a space of stress and worry, which happens every time somebody goes to the hospital, right? It's like the baby's heart rate goes up and
Emergency
and
cesarean.
and it's like, well, something's major is happening right now. So if my heart rate's going up, their heart rate's going to go up too. But like, what are some of the tools that you use, in your practice?
Well, one, it's a birth plan. Starting off with that, like where do you want to birth? How do you want to birth? Do you want to be on your back? Do you want to be squatting? Do you want people to be in the room? Do you want your partner to be in the room? Like, how do you envision yourself going into this like sacred ritual ceremony? It's giving birth. It's really a ceremony. It's like a rite of passage, I like to say, because you are not the same person you were when you were laboring after birth. Like you feel, literally, you feel like your body opened up. But besides that, you feel like your whole essence, like you're tapping into other frequencies that you didn't even know existed. And I feel personally, you know, the medical system, the medicalized system, the history that stands with the hospitals and our bodies. Exactly. Also, let's just talk about, you know, who they learned from, who obstetrics learned, the whole
Do you guys know the story of that? No. Do you want to tell it?
Yeah, like a brief history.
It's important to know because
Right.
it's part of the reason why Black women still die at much larger,
like 3 times.
yeah.
times.
Yeah, so it's important to know so you can keep this in your mind when if you haven't had children, or if you have, the next time you do, if you want them, why you need to really advocate for yourself
Or have someone there to advocate for you.
Yes.
So, you know, I don't know if you guys heard that saying, like Black women birthed America. It's literally that. Black women birthed this entire country. They weren't calling their grandma to come and birth their babies. They were calling the old Black lady down the street. They were calling someone. They were midwives back then were, you know, they were like witch doctors, if you'd like to call them. They were spiritual entities, you know, who were very well versed in the world of life and death. So who else are you going to have to birth your babies, especially when their obstetrics wasn't even around? So obstetrics, they realized that like, oh, okay, maybe I can make money off of this. So like in the 50s, they had the top Black midwives all around the country come and teach doctors how to deliver babies. What are the signs? What do I need to look for? What does a contraction look like? What happens if this happens? And then once they've extracted enough information from them, they went down to Washington and started lobbying against Black midwives and Black midwifery, saying that it was unsanitary, they're dirty, your baby's going to die. And so Black midwifery kind of slowly died off because obstetrics came into play, and they're like, oh, you can have your baby in this safe hospital setting just in case anything happened. But we've been birthing humans and squatting in huts and in bushes and in the forest since man began. You know, how is it that you know everything starting from 1950s was 70 years ago? So there's a little history on that. And as far as, you know,
but even when you think of the father of gynecology,
right,
and he would do experiments on his slaves and do surgery on them and wouldn't give them any
local anesthesia,
any anesthesia, no medicine at all. And so it was written in books that Black women were stronger than anyone else, but it's because we had to be, right? Because I mean, some people died, I'm sure, and then others didn't, right? You know, and so even up until now, it's literally those books are just starting to change, right?
Are they? I mean, it's still up for debate,
no.
you know?
It's still, I'm not saying that it's that the practice, right? Because when you have however many 100 years or whatever years of that being the mantra, then just the same way the epigenetics and everything else, it just becomes a conditioning mechanism. And if that's the way that medicine is practiced, then that's the way that people believe is practiced. And even the people that look like you will treat you that way or can have the ability to treat you that way. And so
Because that's what they learned in school.
exactly.
That is the academic norm,
Exactly.
and, the idea that we have a higher pain tolerance, or that we can take it, or we're being dramatic, or, it's just a number of things within a hospital setting. So one of the things that I tell my clients, especially my Black clients, or my women of color or people of color, is know where you stand once you walk through that hospital door. Everything changes. You are not in charge of this body anymore. Your body is not even yours. So knowing that first off, then you can devise a birth plan. And then if you really feel safer in a hospital setting, or if
That's
you
what you
have
should
some,
do.
then that's what or you have some health conditions that might lead you to be in a safer place in a hospital settings, that's where that birth plan is going to kick in. I tell my clients, print it out and you hand it out to everybody on staff that's going to be in your room. You are allowed to demand that space. I love that this is called reclaiming wellness, because I like to say reclaiming your body, taking your birth back. We're not we're not experiments anymore. And so the reason why I got into birth work is because I believe that if we can feel our sacred selves when we are pregnant, in our pregnant bodies, have that sacred ritual of giving birth, then our children are not being born out of stressed bodies and in stress environments anymore. So you're already giving them the one up. I have the chills. You're already giving them the one up that all of our ancestors couldn't give us for this, that, or for whatever reason. And so if your child has the opportunity to come earthside in a calm, peaceful manner, then it has that much opportunity to then grow up saying and demand that in every space they show up in. No, actually, I know what it feels like to feel safe. I know that what this environment is giving me, it's giving me stress. So I'm going to take a step back. So
I'm gonna go take a nap.
I'm going to go take a nap, basically.
I love it.
And, everyone should have a doula. Everyone should have someone to advocate for you, whether that's someone that you seek out, whether that's your auntie, or your grandma, whoever is strong enough to hold it down for you and your partner, or for you in that room. That's who you have to have with you.
And once again, deaf to the paraphernalia. When I say that, I mean, that doesn't mean that you have to pay a doula. If your auntie or your grandma or your sister or your cousin or whoever has had a baby before, they know what to do, right? So don't hear what she's saying thinking that you have to do that, right? If you have the resources, by all means, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to cost you anything.
No, it's about being resourceful, right? You can train whomever and say, look, read this book, read Erica Chidi's book. Yeah.
Oh, that's my boo.
Yeah, I love her. Do some learning, figure out how you can hold space for me and protect me when I'm in this sacred realm of giving birth, because I shouldn't be having to focus on anything else besides my body and my baby. Number one. Number two, I lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
I have baby brain. Okay. I have a 7-month at home. So
I love it. I have an addendum.
Okay, let's
So for someone looking to take their journey of reclaiming wellness, with plant medicine, what does that look like as an herbalist? What are some of the things that you can share with us?
Herbalism is now a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yes, it is.
They will sell you ashwagandha with the quickness, and you not even know where it comes from.
Right.
Okay. So, how I practice herbalism is stay in your bioregion, right? Sit with the plants. The plants will come and talk to you. Sometimes if I'm going on a hike and I'm like, damn, I know nettles is here, but I haven't seen it. I've done this hike 5 times and I'm really thinking about it. And literally it pops up it's I've been here this whole time. Plants will talk to you. It's also like spirituality or getting back into your body and nourishing yourself, sitting with those things, it will guide you. So I would say, like, try not to get sucked into the hype of herbalism. Certain plants will come and talk to you and be like, you know what? You're a lavender mommy. Okay. Make a lavender satchel, put it under your pillow, get yourself some essential oils. Maybe you should be having lavender tea every night. And maybe that's just your thing. Lavender tea is so good. It's so good. And you'll feel the medicine work through you. We've got to decolonize herbalism. We've got to decolonizing this foraging. You know, I don't like that word anymore, forage, because we've never foraged, right? We were either hunters or gatherers. You know, we've either gathered things or killed things to eat. We've never foraged or never wild harvested. Everything's fucking wild. Like, we don't need to put wild in front of everything. We're innately wild animals. So before you step into this herbal journey, you know, sit with yourself, sit with your ancestors and ask them, like, okay, this is where I want to be. I want to introduce herbs into my life. I need it to a lot. I got into herbalism because it saved my life. Actually, I was prescribed bipolar manic depressant. I was highly suicidal after my father committed suicide. And I tried medication and it made me crazy. You know, I didn't know who I was. And to me, that wasn't a life worth living, you know, feeling numb or needing to take all this like cocktail of psychotropic medicine to feel myself in front of my kids. I didn't want that to be me. And so I just kind of, you know, I tapped into, I'm like, you know what, all this is new. How did they used to do it? Like, what did they do? They were like having actual hysteric episodes with no Rite Aid or no psychologist to go and talk to. And they use plant medicine to help soothe that. And so tapping into that, I really let the ancestors lead me in this journey and introduce me to herbs in my bioregion. Yes, I dabble a little bit in traditional Chinese medicine or a little bit in Ayurvedic medicine, but mostly I'm working with the herbs in my backyard. I'm working with the herbs that grow plentifully around me. I know here in Texas, there's so much medicine out there that you don't need to go and buy. So a lot of how I like to practice herbalism and urge other folks to is like, go on those plant walks. And instead of doing what the colonizers do, and they take, sit with that plant, revisit that plant, watch where it grows. If it grows by the water, it's a water soluble plant. So obviously it's going to then treat the water systems within our body. If it grows in harsh sun, that's a sun plant. So that's something that we should be taking when we need to lift our spirits, when we need to brighten up our organs. And going to collect seed, right? Sitting with that plant, knowing when seed happens and collecting those seeds and then growing them. I believe in like really creating that relationship with the plant. Then the plant will be like, okay, you're worthy enough for me to work on you then. Mm-hmm. If you're just going to take me because it's trending, ashwagandha is trending, or all the other herbs that are rose baths, but you don't know the journey of that rose. You don't know what colonizer invaded what country or invaded what Native American sacred space, took all those plants, dried it, and you're basically getting like dust. You know, you're not even getting the real medicine. So taking back our right to recreate that relationship and that connection to the earth, because none of this, we wouldn't be eating if it wasn't for our ancestors. Mm-hmm. Our ancestors are the ones that taught everyone how to farm, how to plow, how to sow seed, what grows where. They didn't know anything. They would have starved without us. So reclaiming that within ourselves, it is in there, you know, it didn't go anywhere. Again, we are the color of the earth for a reason. Mm-hmm. So reclaiming that relationship with the earth is really where you're going to find your herbalism, or the herb that works best for you, or the plant medicine that will be an ally for you during your healing journey.
Love.
Sorry, I can rant for
No, I love it. And also, if you aren't going to forage,
right,
right? Like it's
together.
also
Yeah.
it's also okay to go to your neighborhood
Yes. Yes. You know,
to your neighborhood herb store.
yes.
And yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
But also,
Yeah. But I respect you. I respect you going down to the root of it. Because
Yes.
somebody in here must have wanted to hear that, you know?
well, and also just like if we, you know, like keeping that close relationship of I just get hyper paranoid, you know, I'm like, where did you harvest this? Where did you get this? Where,
get it.
you know, and
Yeah.
because if they're poisoning us left and right, just because it's plant medicine, how do they know? How do we know?
For
You
sure.
know,
I respect you.
so just like asking those questions and also just working with a couple of plants, you know, not overwhelming yourself. Like I love your line. You don't have all these herbs that are trending, you know,
No.
you
It's pretty simple.
you stick with the simple, basic, gentle plants, like especially during pregnancy when people are like, oh, well, can I take this? I'm like, peppermint and chamomile. Okay. And
Yeah.
like nettles. Those are the three things that I work with. I don't know what pregnancy tea you got with 18 different herbs in there. That scares me. And it should scare
As it
you,
should.
you know,
As
like
it should. Well, listen, thank you guys. This has been a beautiful conversation.
thank you.
I want to end it. Arielle, I'm going to start with you. I want to end it with, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Right. I want to end it. I want to end our conversation with just one tip on reclaiming wellness for maybe for them and then also for yourself.
Well, I'm not going to say anything to anyone else that I wouldn't say to myself.
No, for sure. But you know, the reason why I'm saying that,
Yeah.
so that we're not just prescribing information.
Sure.
You know, because I know like everything I talk about, you know, I'm talking to myself when I'm saying it. And I know that's what you're saying too, but just as a way for us to kind of build a bridge from each other and towards each other.
I don't know. I think I would go back to we have to believe we're enough. We have to believe we're worth it in order to reclaim anything. I think ownership or reclaiming of something doesn't stick if we don't have the attitude and the mindset with it that like, this was mine already and I'm reclaiming it back, right? If I don't believe that was mine to begin with, it's just going to slip off. And that's something that I'm still working on, you know, like even daily, even being on this stage, to be honest, I'm like, you deserve to be here. You deserve to be here. You deserve to be here. I still have to like tell myself shit like that. So I think it's the same for everyone, for you, that I would extend as well, that you believe that you're worth reclaiming it, and that it was yours to begin with. And especially in a space where we're trying to be sensitive to not take, we're not taking, you know, it's a reclaiming, and there's something. Words have such a weight to them, the things we say. So there's such a stickiness sometimes when it comes to take. But when we reclaim something, we feel that in our spine. Like we feel that in how we rise a little bit stronger. So I think my extent would be believing that you're worthy of reclaiming it and that you're not taking, you're reclaiming what was yours to begin with.
And I really echo everything that you said. I think it's important for us to know that and to believe that and to know that wellness is our birthright. Joy is our birthright. Abundance is our birthright. Somewhere along the line, someone told us that it wasn't, and we believed it. And it's all in the mindset. So once we know that we can disrupt that thought and we can change that system and we could tap back into what is inherently ours, that belongs to us, because folks don't want us to be well. Just imagine if we were living well into our hundreds, like my white patients that I told y'all about. Just imagine if we showed up not exhausted, not tired, well rested. What would that look like? And that's something that I embody for myself. I talk to others and I share the same thing. And I also have to remind myself, no, Ashley, this is your birthright. You have the right to take care of yourself. You have the right to rest. My grandmother wasn't able to do that, and she's not here on this earth anymore. So I stand
Her spirit
here.
is though, right next to you.
So I stand here for her and for those before her who were told that they couldn't be well, or that they were labeled, misdiagnosed, overdiagnosed. I think about those who were trying to run away to their freedom and they were diagnosed with drapetomania, which is a diagnosis that used to be in the DSM for slaves who were trying to run away. So
Turn for everything, don't
right,
they?
right. And
You
that's in the very book that I have to use. Like, they've gotten rid of it since then, but we're now on its 5th edition.
Wow.
There's been some very heinous things within that book that I have to utilize in order to treat clinicians, in order to be, not clinicians, well, some clinicians come to me, but in order to treat community members and being reimbursed by insurance, and in order to show like, hey, this is actually applicable to this individual who is experiencing this issue that's written in a book. So yeah, just know that all of this is your birthright, and you have to stay well for yourself, for your community, and for those coming after us.
You just said something, and I just wanted to go into a little bit more. We've been told a lot and we've believed it. I know we had time, but we just gonna roll. We just gonna
We
flow.
rolling with it.
I think what's really important is for us, and I'm saying this to me too. Like, don't think that I'm not saying this to myself. Words mean things, and what we say, like, start paying attention to what you say and how you talk. And how and the stories that we tell ourselves, and the stories that we say about ourselves to other people, and and let people show you who they are, and believe them when they do. Right? I don't know why that came up, I just felt to say that based off of what you just said, but like, we have to be responsible for ourselves and for our wellness and for our minds and for our bodies, right? And for how well we want to be and how successful we want to be and all the things. And in order to do that, you got to be really responsible. I mean, y'all, this is a pivotal time for all the humans in here that are actually going to school at this university, right? Like, this is a beautiful time for you, and take the time to really get to know yourself. Take the time to be good to yourself. Take the time to say nice things to yourself and to say nice things to other people. If you can't say nice things to other people, get on your shit and like, be like, damn, why I say that? Why did I just project that on you? I'm sorry. Yeah. You know what I mean? I shouldn't think that way, because we are what we think, and so I just wanted to say that, because you guys, this is a beautiful university. It really, really is. And what, 1876? Is that what the sign said?
Oh,
that's incredible. Think of all the humans that went here in order for you to be able to be here and enjoying the freedoms that you're able to enjoy in this moment, right? Like, literally your ancestors' dreams, right? And so I just wanted to say that, because it's a real thing.
Just as a little sidebar, it made me think of, that Funkadelic album, Good Thoughts, Bad Thoughts. That song, first of all, that is like, if anybody is feeling down, put that on the headphones and just lie on the floor and just like listen to this man preach. Because there's this one thing that he says, be careful of the thought seeds you plant in your mind, for seeds grow after their kind. And I would say that to myself constantly, because we're used to putting ourselves down, right? Not feeling good enough. So our family puts us down, and then we put ourselves down, and then we're so hard on ourselves. And then that's all you see. And then that starts manifesting in disease. Like we were talking about, like, trauma being trapped in the body and how important movement is.
And cortisol.
Exactly. And so it
stress
makes
hormones.
What that does is it puts you deeper in that hole, and it makes it a little bit more difficult to climb out if you're constantly planting bad seeds. You know, we, like you said, we have to hold ourselves accountable. What we say, that's also like, you know, ancestors say, you know, the power of our voice. Be careful what you speak. Everybody's had a grandma or an auntie say, be careful what you speak, you know, because there's power in that. And once you say it out loud, you are sending that frequency out there, and that frequency will bounce right back to you. So I love that you brought that up, because a big part of wellness is holding yourself accountable, is going through doing the shadow work and going into the darkness and facing that trauma and giving yourself grace, right? I have the chills again. It's just like kind of embracing yourself and being like, it's okay. Like, you were hurting, you know, you didn't know, but now you do. So what are we going to do? How exciting. Yeah. Now, you know, now you have the tools in your bag. Now you have the resources. Now you have the community. Now you have the safe space. So let's get it. Like, what are we about to do?
Yeah. And don't let your ego hold you back, you know, because that's the hard part. That's the one right there. Because it'll tell you all the stuff, you know, and then you don't do it because you like, man, I don't want to, what's going to look like if I, you know, but like, you know what? So what? Whatever it looks like, we are all doing the same thing. We're all having a human experience. Nobody knows how to do this shit. And if anybody tells you they do, they lying, right? So, you know, be well and take care of yourself for real, deeply
and truly.
And look, it's not easy to do. Actually, it can be quite hard because we've been told the opposite, you know, but like anything that you've been doing for a while, you get better and better at, you know, and so you like Dory, just keep swimming, man.
I always say light work is not light work.
It's not,
you know, and that's how you know who's strong and who's really out here doing everyone's saying, I'm doing the work. I'm like, but are you?
Yeah.
You know, because it's not for the faint-hearted. It's really tough.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank
You everybody for tuning in, for all the people that are zooming in. Now we're actually going to move to an in-person activity. So we're actually going to say goodbye to our digital community. We love you. See you later. And